Welcome, my darlings, to my humble chateau. Please make yourself very comfortable. Relax your mind and release your imagination to me. I will bring you a story to entrance and entertain. Perhaps a frightening one. Perhaps a steampunk. Perhaps a bit of mythology. Anyway, sit back, enjoy, and subscribe to me. Pinnachia, a steampunk fairy tale by Joy Findlay. Once, there was a time called the Great Separation, an era where the extremely rich ruled the world from large, mechanical floating cities, scattered across the sky, and those who were poor lived grounded on Earth. The grounded worked and strived for recognition through steam engineering, electrical invention, and the making of fantastical gadgets, so they could be invited into Cloud City societies and join those who lived cloudside. It was during this era that the Earth's most famous mechanical engineer and inventor designed and built the world's first Cloud City, Skylands. Once it was built, Lord Peto, through tragic loss, decided to live grounded in a small rustic community below this great city. His was a story of lost love and found faith, and a vow to stay grounded for as long as he lived. But this is not his story. This story is of a young mechanical boy Lord Peto created, lost, and found again. This is the story of Pinnachia. In a castle that sat on top of the bluffs of white sands, there was a lab. This white stone-walled lab was situated in the basement of the grand castle, and was where Lord Peto spent many a year living and working. It was on a long stainless steel table that sat his latest and greatest invention, his pride and joy. The machine looked almost like any other 12-year-old boy of that era, except for the fact he was made entirely of mechanical parts. Clothed in breeches and a long-sleeved shirt, he had a backpack strapped to his back and around his middle, and appeared as any other young schoolboy, actually, with sticky-up black hair and striking pale blue eyes. It was that mechanical boy who was about to be woken up for the very first time. Pinnachia's first impression of life was statistically charged as his lenses focused on the kind and worn face of his maker. Smiling back at the engineer's welcome, Pinnachia giggled at a tickling sensation running down his arm. It was another of the engineer's inventions, a mechanical spider called Spidey. "Welcome, my boy, welcome. I am Lord Peto, but you may call me Pepe." The aging inventor patted the mechanical boy on his back, although the older gentleman's black hair was showing a lot more salt than pepper these days. He still held himself with the dignity of a king, even when dressed in a work jacket covered in grease. Lord Peto made a few more adjustments to Pinnachia's leg and feet joints, then removed a small pair of boots from an older, faulty model on the back bench and placed them on the boy's feet. "Now try out your voice box for me, so we can see that all your systems work," Lord Peto asked. "Pepe, it is very nice to meet you," the boy said. "I am Pin. His hand went to his small mouth as he hiccuped his own name. With a hoot and a laugh, Lord Peto thumped his hand on his thigh. Smiling wide, he tightened a screw on Pinnachia jaw, tinkered with the matrix of wires in his open chest, and adjusted the pack on his back before closing everything up. "Well, Pin, that should do it. How does that feel?" he asked the boy. "Feel?" Pin shook his head, not sure what the word meant. "Does everything appear to be in working order?" Pepe helped Pin off the stainless steel bench and encouraged him with a nod to take his first few steps, causing the older gentleman's grin to widen further. "Why, yes, sir. Everything does indeed appear to be working." Pin tripped over a boot, grabbed the bench top, lost his balance, and landed on his bottom. The Lord hooted again, excitement brewing in his chest as he picked the small boy off the workshop floor. "Okay, take it easy, my boy. One thing at a time," he chuckled. And, well, that was that. Pin's first day alive on soil. It was said that as the sun set behind the steam clouds of the floating city that day, Lord Peto continued to teach Pin everything he knew about the world and what it meant to be alive. Chapter 2. Many months and a few mishaps later, Pin had absorbed all that he had to learn from his maker. He curiously watched the elder gentleman express his joy over his amazing engineering projects. The boy asked all the right questions and smiled at all the right places in the conversation. He learned that Pepe's particularly enjoyed describing his giant hot air balloon invention that he never quite got off the ground. Halfway through discussing design issues and malfunctions of the giant balloon, Lord Peto paused, rolled up old blueprints, and filed them away. Pin waited as Peto rummaged through a few boxes and came back with something hidden in his hands. He smiled at Pin then, handed him a small pouch. "This is for you, my boy," he proclaimed, dropping the object into Pin's waiting palms. "For me? Is it a gift?" His eyes widened. "Yes, Pin, your first gift, if you don't count the new shoes we fitted you last week." Pin looked up at his maker, remembering to smile in gratitude as he was taught. "Well done, Pin. Gratitude and a smile will take you far in this world. Now I think you are all set." It was all he could do not to go with Pin, but Lord Peto knew he needed to test Pin out in the world. "Sir," asked Pin, "I am all set?" "Why, yes, my boy." Peto picked up a cold cup of tea. He took a sip, regretfully swallowing it down, and put the tea cup back on the tea tray. "Yes, my boy, it's time you discovered the world for yourself." Lord Peto believed it to be a good plan. Lord Peto took Pin under his arm and led him upstairs to the large lounge windows, paused for a moment, then stretched his arm over the view of the majestic White Sands Bay. "Pin, look before you. There's a world out there waiting for you, and a world out there that you need to learn from. There are many villages in this land, many Cloud City ports that hold incredible adventures and wonderful gadgetry treasures. I am only one lonely old man. A brilliant genius, I might add, but I have taught you everything I know, bar subatomic engineering and steam-powered explosives. Today you go into the world to learn from others, and to help others learn about you. Today, the world will finally know you, my greatest engineering achievement, my most fantastical gadgetry creation lives. It was the finest speech Lord Peto had ever given, if you don't count Skyland's inaugural speech, or his proposal to the love of his life, or his valedictorian speech. The point is that since he became a lonesome recluse, this was Lord Peto's finest speech. He placed 4 coins in Pin's gloved hand, closed his little fingers around them, and looked into his smiling eyes. Pin, my son, I need you to be brave and go alone to the markets. 2 Tesla coils have blown in the foyer, and we need replacements months ago. He placed his old and worn top hat on the mechanical boy's head, repositioned the goggles, and patted his upper arm in support. Don't give the coins to anyone but a merchant, and be sure to use your manners. Don't talk with strangers, and be careful to lift your new shoes like I told you. Lord Peto wrung his hands. Take Spidey with you. Use the bottom exit and close the door on the way out. We don't need it flooding again when the tide comes in. Yes, sir, stuttered Pin. He took the coins, placed them in his new pouch on his belt, and headed down all 604 steps to the castle's back entrance. He had walked some distance along the beach before Spidey tapped him on his neck and pointed back to the house. Ah, yes, the door. Spidey, thank you, he said, returning to close it. We don't need it flooding again when the tide comes in. He mimicked his maker perfectly. Chapter 3. The town was a small village bustling with the life of engineers, tinkers, merchants, and the like. As a Skyland's port, it held not only a harbor for seafaring ships, but a sky dock stood alongside for the 6 zeppelins that ferried goods, tourists, and trade to Skylands. It was towards this zeppelin dock that Pinnachia was walking, looking down at his shoes to make sure he lifted his feet correctly, as Lord Peto had directed him. And he wasn't exactly watching where he was going. He bumped straight into someone, lost his balance, and fell flat on his back. "Oh," said a delicate voice. "Are you okay? Goodness, you should watch where you're going." Pinnachia looked up to find a pretty girl his own size looking down at him, with her hands on her hips. She wore a dark blue bodice over a white high-collared blouse with matching skirts. Pin hadn't seen a girl before, and was amazed how one could walk around wearing so much material. He looked her up and down, from the bonnet covering her golden curly locks to the black boots that modestly covered her ankles. He'd never met anyone outside the workshop before, and since only Lord Peto lived in the castle, well, he'd never met anyone else before. He stared at her with his mouth open. "Are you all right?" she repeated herself. "Well, stop staring and say something, silly," she said. "I'm not allowed to talk to strangers," Pin blurted out, and smacked his hand over his mouth with a clang. Her giggle made him smile, even though he didn't know what she was giggling at. He took her outstretched hand and shook it, all the while sitting on his bottom. "No, silly. Let me help you up, she giggled again. He took her offer to help him off the ground and nearly pulled her on top of him. Oof, she exclaimed. Goodness, you're heavier than you look. Pinnachia stood, helping her with her balance, and returned the welcoming smile. I've never seen you here before. Are you from Cloudside? She tipped her bonnet up to see him better. Pin stood in front of her, staring with his pale blue eyes. What is it like to live up there in that steam-powered wonderland? Still staring, he rocked a little in his new shoes. Frowning, she took a step back, perplexed by his silence. Well, are you going to say something silly? I'm not allowed to talk to strangers. Oh, well, goodness, where are my manners? I'm Honesty. Honesty goodness. And I live with my father on Copper Lane. Well, now that you know me, you can talk to me, yes? She held out her small gloved hand. He took her hand to shake and paused a moment, tilting his head to one side, like he'd seen his Peppy do when thinking. I guess you are correct, Honesty. Honesty goodness. No, just Honesty, she giggled again. Honesty. It is very nice to meet you. My name is Pinnachia, he said with a smile and a nod. But you can call me Pin. That's what Lord Pethoke calls me. With a gasp, Honesty pulled her hand away to cover her mouth. Lord Pethoke? You know Lord Pethoke? Yes, Honesty. Lord Pethoke is my Pepe. He made me. Oh, goodness, Pin. You were made by Lord Pethoke? She began to slowly walk around him, inspecting every rivet, every seam, his hat, goggles, boots, and all. Yes, he nodded with a smile. Well, stop staring and say something silly, he said, using the very words she used on him. She gave a giggle and smacked his arm. Goodness gracious me! I can't believe you live with Lord Pethoke. I've never ever met him before, but he is by far the most amazing engineer in all the world. He invented the slap horn, the walking dog, the boulders of man, and designed and built Skylands, the grandest and most magnificent place in the world. She swept a hand towards the city in the sky that floated above the bay. Pin turned his face up towards the city, but he did not know why she was so excited about it. He turned back to watch her, enthralled at the sight. Have you ever been to Skylands, Pin? She was still staring skyward, her hands clasped together under her chin. I've never been outside Pepe's castle until today, he informed her. Gracious me, she muttered, staring back at him. Then with a jump and a great squeal, she startled Pin, who once again landed back on his bottom. Pin, oh, Pin, you must, oh, you must, she declared, jumping up and down like one of Lord Pethoke's self-agitating pogo sticks. As he picked himself off the ground again, Honesty grabbed his arm and pulled him quickly along the road. Chapter 4. Oh, Pin, this is perfect. I can't go without an escort. It would be amazing for Lord Pethoke's latest invention to meet his first invention. Oh, Pin, you must come with me. She prattled on in excitement. Pin was a little perplexed by this stage and had to maintain his balance while she pulled on his arm. She stopped skipping and took his hand, whipping him around a corner so fast his goggles nearly fell off his head. She held on tight and marched him towards the sky dock. What a perfect way to start the day, she declared, and continued on about being her third time skyside. But since her father was a fisherman, they couldn't migrate there. Blah, blah, blah. No, truly, she told him, blah, blah, blah. It was enough to add to his confusion. But he stopped before they reached the dock office. nearly knocking her off balance again. With quick, smart reflexes, he held her upright before she landed on her bustle in a puddle of greasy water. "Honesty, what is this blah 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 you speak of?" he asked. "Oh, you silly!" she giggled. Then she realized he was serious. She explained, "My father, he won't take me cloudside. He says it's not a place for a merchant's daughter, let alone one wealthy as I. It's like he hates me and won't let me have any fun at all." She folded her arms in front of her and huffed her hair out of her eyes. Pin didn't know what to make of her actions. He'd never seen a person pout before. Spidey tapped his neck again and pointed towards the markets, reminding Pin of his task at hand. But Pin was too distracted. After all of Honesty's blah blah blahing on about it, he really wanted to see Skylands. He pulled out the 4 gold coins and held them in his open palm. When Honesty saw the coins, her eyes went wide with excitement. "Honesty, I am to go to the markets to bring back coils for Pepe. He needs them for his foyer," he tells her. She tries to touch the coins, but Pin closed his hand before she could. "These are not for you, Honesty. They are for a merchant," he declared. "But Pin, we can buy everything we need cloudside. Don't you know that, silly?" "Skyland has merchants, Honesty?" he asked, as Spidey tapped his neck again. Pin took one look at Honesty and her excitement and flicked Spidey to the cobble street road. "They have merchants, pensions, coppers, tinkers, grocers, and more, Pin. It's the most amazing place in the world." She took his hand and again towed him towards the docks. Standing at the Skydock office booth, she paid 1 coin for herself and another for Pin. When the ticket agent eyed them both, Pin remembered to smile his gratitude as Pepe taught. With their tickets in hand, they both boarded the small silver and orange Zeppelin and found a seat near the starboard side. So quoth this raven, "My darlings, it's been too long since I've done a steampunk story. This one is a 2 or 3-parter, probably a 3-parter. I have a couple stories by Joy Findlay to read to you, and so we will be exploring these in the coming weeks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a like. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and make sure you ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me sometime. And if you comment, I will do my very best to comment back. Farewell, my darlings.